time. Proverbs 4. And first of all, let's read verses 14 and 15. Enter not into the path of the wicked, go not in the way of evil men. Avoid it, pass not by it, turn from it, and pass away. We left off last time in this section. The way of the evil man, or the wicked, is his manner of living that he follows. His habits, his behavior, his qualities, his interests, the way he conducts his business, the way he treats others or cheats others perhaps, the way he looks at the world around him, looking out for himself and his own desires and not caring about those of the rest of folks around him. That's the way he's conducting himself. The path of the wicked, or the path of the evil man, is the road that he's on. And it's going to lead him to a certain destination one day. Hell and destruction, ultimately. You are to avoid it. You are to run from it and seek to go in the opposite direction of the way, the course, and the mannerisms, and the life, and the living, and the direction of the unsaved around you, the unbelieving around you. His destination, or the way of the evil man, leads only to sin and evil. Come back to Genesis chapter 39. Genesis chapter 39. I'm going to ask you to turn to a lot of places, and I'll try to go quickly so we can cover as much as possible in the time remaining. Genesis 39, and start at verse 7, if you will. Here is Joseph in the house of Potiphar, the chief captain of the guard of Pharaoh. Genesis 39, beginning at verse 7. And it came to pass after these things that his master's wife cast her eyes upon Joseph, and she said, Lie with me. But he refused, and said unto his master's wife, Behold, my master wotteth not what is with me in the house, and he hath committed all that he hath to my hand. There is none greater in his house than I, neither hath he kept back anything from me but thee, because thou art his wife. How then can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And it came to pass, as she spake to Joseph day by day, that he hearkened not unto her, to lie by her, or to be with her. And it came to pass about this time that Joseph went into the house to do his business, and there was none of the men of the house there within. And she caught him by his garment, saying, Lie with me. And he left his garment in her hand, and fled, and got him out. He said, Away, woman, get away from me. I'm not going to get involved with you. You're another man's wife. He says, How could I do this great wickedness and sin against God? See, Joseph understood that everything he did didn't matter if it was just him and her in the house. God would know it. God would see it. And there's nothing hidden from the eyes of Almighty God. And that is a great lesson for a Christian, especially a Christian young person, to follow. Get away from the setting, from the environment, from the opportunity, from the temptation as quickly as you can. Just get away. He left his coat in her hand. She's grabbing onto him. He's spinning around to get out of that garment. She grabs his coat and he runs off. And of course what happens is she hollers out the window at the men down below, Hey, the Hebrew that came in tried to mock me. In other words, he tried to seduce me or come on to me and try to assault me. And when I started screaming, he took off and I got his coat. Here, this proves it. That he started taking his clothes off and then I screamed and he got away. Of course, it wasn't true, but that's basically what she was implying. And Potiphar threw Joseph in prison. And I got to thinking about this one time as I was reading through Genesis. Why didn't Potiphar have Joseph put to death? And, and you wouldn't be surprised if a man, a ruler with power, could do whatever he wanted with his servant. He would have had him put to death for trying to come on to his own wife. But maybe he knew something about his wife that the Bible doesn't describe for us. Maybe she had been in the habit of doing this in the past. Maybe she was flirting with all the other hired help. And there's some young Hebrew young man over there. He looks like he's buffed and in good shape. And I'm getting old and saggy. And my years of my beauty are fading away. I need some young, brawny, young Jew boy to come over and we'll have a little fun together. And this is basically what's going on here. And he said, how can I do this great wickedness and sin against God? And Potiphar knew there was something in Joseph. He had never had any reason to mistrust him before. And he had a hard time believing that Joseph would do such a thing. And so he didn't have him executed. But he had to save face. You know, people are wondering, what are you going to do? So he puts him in prison, just so it looks like he's done something. And of course, a couple of years go by, and Joseph is finally raised and elevated to Pharaoh's court because of his wisdom and his obedience to God. And it may cost you a job. It may cost you reputation. You might end up not with the position you once had or the salary, the income you once had. But if you are there because you have done right and you resisted sin and refused it, then God's pleased with that. So that was the story of Joseph. And that's the lesson that every person ought to learn. Back to Proverbs chapter 4, verses 16 and 17. He's talking about the wicked and the evil men. Verse 16, for they sleep not, except they have done mischief, and their sleep is taken away, unless they cause some to fall. For they eat the bread of wickedness and drink the wine of violence. We commented on this last time. We don't need to dwell on it very long, but there are some people who can engage in wickedness and the worst kinds of sin and still sleep sound at night. The conviction of a guilty conscience no longer bothers them. It doesn't cause them to lose sleep in fear or worry, wondering if they're going to get caught or get found out. They don't care. They're going to do what they want to do, and the rest of the world can go jump off a cliff. But in the New Testament, the Apostle Paul describes some men. He says their consciences are seared with a hot iron. 1 Timothy 4, verse 2. Their conscience is seared with a hot iron. It no longer has the ability to direct your conduct and check your behavior and keep you from doing what you shouldn't do. When you do something wrong, suddenly you have a guilty conscience. And it's that guilty conscience that's supposed to help check and keep you from going any further. But some men, like I said in our search hour in Ecclesiastes 8, verse 11, it says, because sentence against an evil work is not executed speedily, therefore the heart of the sons of men is fully set in them to do evil. When they get away with something bad, they think they've gotten away with it. They want to try and get away with something worse. And pretty soon their conscience no longer bothers them. So if you ever hear someone say, let your conscience be your guide, that's some of the worst advice you can ever listen to. Because your conscience, once your conscience tells you what you did wrong, the next thing it's going to do is try to justify what you did. And say, well, it's not as bad as what the other person did, so don't worry about it. You see, pretty soon your conscience becomes seared with a hot iron. And God's no longer able to speak to you through that means, through that method. All right. Jump down now to verses 18 and 19, Proverbs 4. But the path of the just is as the shining light that shineth more and more unto the perfect day. The way of the wicked is as darkness. They know not at what they stumble. Men instinctively identify light with goodness and dark with evil. I mean, you don't even have to read the Bible, and you associate light with illumination and wisdom and goodness, and you associate darkness with evil and sin and corruption. A doctor wears a white lab coat to convey the idea that what he's doing is safe and sanitary, and it represents good health and so forth. And the young goth kids or emo kids or whatever they're called this week, and the two Columbine shooters wore black t-shirts and black trench coats, and they dye their hair jet black and all these things, and they have black in their hearts. There's something evil and unclean within them, and had nothing but evil intentions towards their fellow students day after day, and come in and shoot up the school and not only commit suicide, but after they've taken, I think, the lives of 12 other students. Now, most of the sin that men engage in, they do so at nighttime, under the cover of darkness, hoping that nobody will see them, nobody will notice them. Whether it's theft and stealing, whether it's drugs or drunkenness, whether it's fornication or prostitution, whatever the case may be, most of